just in terms of, you know, in half an hour and with the diversity of people that we have here, there's no way we could really get a good understanding of the philosophies and fundamentals of organic. I just use some general terms. You'll often come across this when you're doing some readings on organic. One of the philosophies would be to mimic nature. What are some examples that we use in organics to mimic nature? Composting, yeah. So yeah, and that's sort of even goes to the next point, optimizing on what nature provides. Decomposition, everything happens. It's you know, everything will decompose eventually, but using the technologies of composting and the knowledge systems that have been put into composting, we could perfect that system, or we can enhance it or optimize it, and then it can create better benefits to the agricultural system. How else do we mimic nature?
We let the cows out to graze. We don't keep them locked in the barn.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, that's a great example. That's an example of, you know, allowing as Joel Salatin says, allowing a pig to express its pigness. You want to be able to allow the natural behaviors of those animals, and so grazing is one concept that does that for dairy cattle or for beef cattle, but also that whole idea of socialization. So it's allowing that animal to go out there and mill around with his or her friends. The next part, more on the optimization process. You know, I'm a firm believer that nature provides us with about 80% of everything we need to get in terms of yield. If you did really nothing out there except sow some seeds, you could probably get 80% of conventional yields. What we try to do in terms of farming is to optimize that. And perhaps the problem that we've had in conventional agriculture is that we're not often happy with that sort of 80%. And we want to get to the 100% or the 120%. And what we do is we end up spending all of our inputs, all of our sort of free capital that nature has provided us. We take all that, all the profits essentially, and put it in trying to get that extra 20%. And so we end up with a zero slate. What we try to do in an organic system would be to take what nature has given us and enhance it with some of the benefits, like grazing. You know, having a cow harvest something versus you harvesting it. Using compost and benefiting from the synergies that happen within the microorganisms and its response to, and the plant's response to that type of system. So one of the other major philosophies is to just look at your, I mean, this ties into your cost of production. You want to make sure that what you're doing in terms of adding inputs does reflect what you will be getting in the product in return. Start with the soil. In fact, I think that's a title of a book. It is the sort of the mantra of organic farming. One of the main questions you want to ask before you do anything in your farming system, you know, is it good for the soil? And if you kind of use that principle, whether it's putting animals out on a wet field, or whether it's even just putting animals out, or whether it's using a tillage implement or using a soil amendment. If you use this sort of general question, you know, is it good for the soil, and kind of step back and think of that in terms of what's going to happen to your soil, it's a good decision maker, and you can pretty much, you know, figure out things on your own to say, yeah, maybe this is something I want to try, or you know what, maybe I should stay away from this, and it's gonna negatively affect my soil. Both Mary and Klaus did talk especially about keeping your soil covered. You know, Ralph Martin, when I first worked with Ralph at the Organic Agriculture Center Canada, I think his screensaver was keep your soil covered. He just had that just always flashing around his computer. So it is another important thing. How do we go about doing that? How do we keep our soil covered?
In like mulching?
Mulching, yeah, that's a good example. Yep. Other ways?
Cover crop?
Cover crops. Yeah. Intensive rotations. So, you know, whether you are in, and that could be in terms of cover crops or green manures, or intercropping, those type of systems will ensure that there's very few niches available for undesirable plants to come in or to allow for soil erosion or anything like that effective. And so that's sort of getting into the more specific practices that organic producers should be following, and you can get into the details of the crop rotations. And the benefits of the crop rotations would be things like breaking down disease cycles and weed cycles and pests, insects, using green and animal manures or compost. That's your main fertility sources should come from those systems, and part of that could include things like cover crops and stuff. So, very quickly, this is the last the point I would make on sort of the fundamentals, and it's important that you observe your land and your animals at all seasons. And once again, observing all species. So it's not that you're only observing your crops, but you're observing the weeds. You're observing the insects that are on the weeds. It's important to make those type of observations, because what you might be doing in terms of getting rid of the crop predator, you may also be getting rid of the insect predator. And it's important to document. People keep journals. This is, even if you don't, if you're certified organic, it's important to keep very strict audit trail of what's going on both in your field and how you're harvesting crops and whatnot. But it's also important if you're just gardening, and to just document and see what happens, what type of changes you're observing over the many seasons.